Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Insert theme music here. Insert theme music here. All right. Good evening, people. Special edition Merriwether's World, episode 98, with the return of Professor Brandon Lowery, the Bearded Hobbit. Yay! The crowd goes wild. Yep, I gotta have him back before I end the show. So, cool. He's here. We're going to talk archery because he's in archery. And I saw him do this thing and it made me think, wow, I want to do that. And I want someone who knows what they're doing to show me how to do that. And since he was the guy who did it, I figured let's have him here and show us how to do it. And it will be converting a long piece of pipe that you should not swing around in your dining room. Oh, well, accidents happen. Okay. So anyway, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Mark Merriwether Borderbergen, author of Idiot's Guide Foraging, creator of the Foraging Texas website, doer of many things. I'll just throw some links up here to help you know who I am. And then, of course, long-term friend, Professor Brandon Lowery, the Bearded Hobbit, camping buddy, farmer's buddy, maker of many things. He brews beer and mead and stuff like that. And you'll definitely want to check out and subscribe to his YouTube channel there. So let me put that up. All right, let's get into this. We'll go for a little bit, then we'll bring up some sponsors. I see, well, Uncommon Bees is here. So, of course, let's do a shout out to Uncommon Bees. Yeah. Because when you order from Uncommon Bees, they're apiary goods. I got it right this time. Use the coupon Forking Weeds, a secret Foraging Texas secret code word. And any time of the week, you will get a 10% discount. But now until 9:30 tonight, you get 25% off. So check it out. Okay. And since we're doing this, one more, hang on. I got to do a shout out to Wazoo Survival because they're the ones that paid for the StreamYard account that allows me to do this. So Wazoo Survival is who I work with to create the foraging bandana. They have lots of what I call get me home gear. So the sort of stuff you take with you so you can get back home in case something bad happens. All right, now, without further ado, Professor Brandon, let's get into this. Let's make a bow.
Yeah.
I can use to defend myself.
Yeah, it can be used in two different ways. You can actually just use it to whack people.
Yeah. My wife moves really fast. I'm not gonna, no whacking the wife. She will whack me, but oh well.
Yeah, you probably from her when you're done for sure.
Yeah. Oh well. Things happen. She's used to things happening around me. There are certain rules about me and power tools, so I have no power tools with me tonight.
Yeah,
she says I require adult supervision.
Right. That's kind of what I was like. Let's just do regular tools. Power tools can make this a lot easier because there's a couple different ways that you can go about doing this. We're just going to do a real simple one tonight, just to get the idea across, and then you can just go nuts with these things.
Cool. Plan.
I guess we can go ahead and get started on this, and then we'll just kind of talk as we go through it. If there's any questions along the way, we can go from there, I guess.
Yep.
So what I have here is just a 5-foot length of PVC. I chose 5 foot because that will fit most people. Getting too long, for most people, you're not going to get a very good shot. You're not going to get a lot of good resistance from that. However, with you, Mark, being very tall, as was mentioned earlier, this may be a short bow for you. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. That's insane. That's just insane. Yeah, so you see where it comes to me. That's why I'm the Hobbit. You know?
Comes still. Not to my beard yet.
No.
So.
Yeah, it'll be a short bow instead of a long bow for you.
I'm okay. I can sneak around with it.
Yeah, that's the nice thing with these is once you know how to build one, you just adjust the length for you, and you can build one super easy. the most important part is the part at the beginning, and that is measuring everything out, so that you have all the dimensions and everything marked. And so this will get marked up, so whenever you're all done, if you ended up with one you want to keep, you can sand it and paint it and do all kinds of fun stuff with it, but for now we are going to have to mark that up. What I always start with is I want to know the exact midpoint of this bow. Whenever you shoot a traditional bow or anything like that, it's not exactly going to be center on some of these, the way that some of the stuff bends. And for art, it's going to be the center. So I'm going to measure out 2.5 feet. And what I'm going to do is just put a mark there so I know about where that is.
Okay, and I will point out from like Lowe's and Home Depot, you can buy the 5-foot pre-cut lengths.
Okay.
3/4 inch PVC is what we are using here tonight.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I kind of, we're using 3/4 inch. Now, I have made bows using 1/2 inch for my kids because they're going to be a little bit easier to pull. You can make it out of 1 inch, but man, they can go up in a lot of poundage by using 1 inch. And it gets a little more difficult to shoot those things. So 2.5 feet, that's what? That's, where am I at? 30 inches, okay? That's gonna be our midpoint. And then from the end, what we're gonna mark in just a minute is we're gonna do some marking from the ends. But before we do that, we wanna make sure that when we make our grooves for our string to fit down in, that they are exactly the same on that end as they are on this end. And so the trick that I use to do this, you get on a flat surface, let's say a table or wherever you're working, get on your piece of PVC. Sorry, I gotta make some space over here on my table. And you want to make sure that it's not wobbling or moving. So you might want to put something behind it to keep it from rolling. Because then what we're going to do is we're going to take our marker. We're just going to lay it flat. And let me see if you can see this. So we're going to lay it flat. I'll go a little bit closer. It's hard to see over here. We're going to lay this flat. And that way we can mark exactly the same spot on each end. Doesn't have to be a pretty line or anything like that. You just want about the same midpoint.
And I know me, I would probably tape the piece of pipe down a little just to keep it from rolling as I bumble from one end to the other.
Right. So once you get that, I mean, you get a nice little line on there. I'll bring it in.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be the same on that end. And so now what this means is this line is going to be the front of the bow. Okay, so what that means is we're going to be holding it with that part out because we're gonna mark this up here. Sorry, other way.
It takes,
we're gonna mark this
like
up.
There he is.
I know, right? And then we're gonna groove it out here for the string.
Okay.
Okay. So again, pretty simple so far. Nothing too big.
And I just want to throw another thing out there. When I was at the Lowe's looking at these, I quickly noticed that even though the pipes were 5 feet long, there was actually a fairly large variation. If you set them all up, they ranged probably a ½ inch or more in height or different length.
Okay.
So we went through and picked out the two longest, and they're definitely more than 5 feet long.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if you get a pre-cut piece, then yeah, you might want to measure that and make sure it's 5 feet. That way you know exactly where the center is.
Yeah.
I cut this one off of a 10-foot piece, so I know exactly that it's 5 feet. Okay. The second part, I was like, where's my tape measure? Happens all the time. Where the hell is it? So now where that line is, we want to measure down 1 inch and put another kind of little cross mark there on each end. And I'll show you guys what that looks like.
Okay. While you're doing that, I got a really interesting question here from Alan. Wanting to know, have you made one with a schedule 80 pipe, and would that have a higher power?
I've not made one with the Schedule 80. I have seen people that have done that. I do believe you do get more power out of those from what I understand. I think that one of the other benefits from Schedule 80, is Schedule 80 the gray like conduit piping? Am I correct in that assumption?
The internet, I believe so.
The gray conduit piping PVC is actually more UV resistant because it's meant to be out in the sun, whereas regular cheap PVC, which we'll talk about later, if it's left in the sun too long, it can become brittle.
Good point.
And that can be problematic. The same way if it gets too cold. As most of us know from this last snowstorm, my aunt's house has shattered PVC everywhere underneath her house.
Okay. And Kimberly, just to answer your question, what we are making a PVC archery bow for archery activities.
Yeah. One thing to make this a little bit easier, I don't necessarily do this, but I have done it in the past to kind of help out. I just measured the 1 inch mark on there. And so on this 1 inch, that's where we're going to actually make a groove around for the string. But we're going to end up making like a sad face on it, kind of like a mustache, a down-facing mustache on it. But to make sure that we don't go too far on that mustache and we're equal, it's not a bad idea to draw another line down here and use that as a guideline to make sure you don't go too far. So whenever you draw this on, it makes it a lot easier to do that. So I'm just going to do that now and show you guys, because again, it just makes it easier if you've never done kind of this before. It can be hard to draw on a rounded piece of pipe, so it can be tricky.
And while you're doing that, Wade mentions that the Schedule 80 is just thicker. It's not necessarily UV resistant.
Okay.
So specifically the conduit one. So if it's conduit, I guess Schedule 80, Wade, then it will have the UV resistance in it.
So the next mark that I'm putting in there is at 1.5 inch mark. Okay. And so now I've got two of those marks. And on the top one is where I'm going to draw kind of my mustache, my upside down sad face. But what I'm going to do with this bottom one, I'm just going to draw kind of as straight as possible line just around a little bit to kind of guide me on that. Okay. And I know you're like, oh my God, man, how much drawing are you going to do on this? This is kind of the most important part.
Yeah, well, it is. So it's the whole.
Yeah, once we get past this, we're done pretty much.
Yeah, the whole measure twice, cut once sort of thing.
Exactly. See, you know what's up. Now, Mark, have you shot a bow before?
Oh, many times. In fact, in South Dakota State University, you had to take 2 lifetime activities classes, and one I took was bow hunting. And so they actually had an archery range there on the campus, and you would shoot 3 times a week for about an hour. And by the end of it, we were, setting Coke cans way down on the targets and aiming for letters in the Coke and things like that, because shooting at the big round target got boring. But that was 30 years ago. When I'm at the Renaissance Festival and so forth, I go to the archery thing, but I've discovered, again, because, we saw how big I was, my draw length, it's abnormally large.
Yeah.
And so I am limited to only the longest of the arrows that are available. So like a 31-inch arrow is about as long as they make an arrow. And typically, my draw length is over 32 inches. So
that's a huge draw length.
Baby bull.
Yeah. So here's just that line. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go probably till about here on the outset. So that's what? Yeah, about 1/2 inch to the left, up to the left and to the right of that.
Okay, 1/2 inch off. Okay.
So it's a 1/2 inch down and a 1/2 inch over.
Gotcha. Oh, that's easy to remember.
Yeah, it's about where I'm going to go. Now it's not going to be.
Oops, you're off.
We'll go a little bit here. I'll draw it.
Yeah, I was going to say, pull it towards your nose.
I'm not. I'm on a front-facing camera, so it's throwing me off.
I have to, before like I point to you, I think, okay, point away. So like I'm pointing opposite, but it's pointing at you. That's one of those fun things of being on camera.
Yeah. Yeah, I took an archery class when I was at St. Houston as well, but I had already been shooting archery, so I was like, it's a blow-off class. And it was a lot of fun then.
Well, it was neat. Like I said, mine was actually a archery hunting class. So it wasn't just shooting the bow and arrow, but it was all the stalking and all that sort of thing too. So
that's cool.
I don't even know if they'd allow to teach that anymore in schools. But at university, they still have in one of the dorms a gutting room where you are allowed to clean your fish and your pheasants and even up to a deer-sized animal. And they have an armory on the campus where you can lock up your hunting gear. So you can have it at school with you, but it has to be locked up at this one place, and then you have to give them advance notice when you're taking it out and so forth. So
that's pretty cool, man. That's awesome.
Oh, it had the best pheasant hunting around, yeah.
All right, so now it almost looks like I drew a bow on the bow.
True.
So now that we've got that rounded, so this is just our guide, and once we kind of put the string on it, you can always take it off and kind of fix it where it needs to go and all that good stuff. Now, there is another way to do this than what we're about to do. You would still go through the same process. You draw your line about 1 inch, but instead of, we're going to file it tonight. We're just going to kind of file our little groove in there. You don't necessarily have to do that. I have made some, and I'll grab one in just a second, where you simply drill a hole right through the middle, and you can just string it that way and tie it up.
Okay.
One of the problems with that is once you tie it, though, if you do that on both ends, now you've got a bow that's always on tension. Yeah. And PVC will hold its shape if you do that, and then it'll be useless. Mm-hmm. You need it to reflex, right? You can drill a hole and then take the file and file the same kind of groove around. That way you can take it out. If you decide to do that tonight, by all means do so, but make sure that you're sanding and filing down the edges, because it's going to move and rotate in that hole, and it will just eat through your string.
Yeah. So you need it nice and smooth. Yeah, this is where a Dremel tool works really well too.
Oh yeah, Dremel would make this a lot easier. So you can see here. Let me bend this one a little bit. See, this is another one that I had made. This is the one that was in the photo, I believe. Yeah. But you can see.
Okay. Smiley face.
A smiley face in there. I'm trying to get something.
A frowny face.
Yeah, frowny face, right? And so you can do that.
Pull it in a little towards you.
Oh yeah, sorry. So you can do that, but you really are dealing with a lot of edge in there. Perfectly fine, just as long as you understand that's what you're dealing with, right?
I said, yeah, sanding the edges so you don't cut through your bowstring, because plastic will cut the string. Oh, yeah, especially if it's under tension.
All right, so now it's time to file the groove in there. So what I've got a round file here. You got a knife.
Well, but no, it's a Swiss Army knife with a file.
You can, okay, go for it.
I was practicing earlier. It was slow.
Yeah. I've got the round file here. Now, this one that I have, it's a little bit too big. I need to get one that's a little bit smaller in diameter, but it still works just fine. So if you don't have a file that's round hole, again, a Dremel will work. You can drill a hole through and then just kind of use a saw and just kind of cut a half circle around there, and you should be fine. It takes some time. The trick with this one is once you start going, trying to follow that circle as best you can evenly, because if you get it uneven, your bow's going to try to twist a little bit. Okay.
This is one of those cases where, you know, slow and steady is better than going really fast. So
yeah, for sure, for sure. That's always my problem with woodworking is I want to get it done yesterday, and then screw something up. Yeah, it's just gonna be a lot of fighting here. A lot of fighting.
I can see I went a little crooked already. So
yeah, it can be difficult. So yeah, if you have a Dremel with one of the smaller heads, you can totally do this pretty quick. But again, you want to be careful because Dremels can go super fast.
right. Well, and also if it goes too fast, the plastic actually starts melting.
Yes.
So that's one of the things you have to watch out with the Dremel tool is the plastic will melt and deform, and it doesn't give you a nice hole. So again, you want to go with the Dremel tool. Most Dremels have an adjustable speed, so you got to find the right one. I would actually recommend. My wife would actually recommend, hey, Mark, maybe you should start with a scrap piece and practice a few times first, and then do it. And I found she's a very wise woman. That works really good. You know, starting with a scrap piece and making sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah, you can never expect to be perfect the first go around.
Yep.
All right, I'm almost to a point where I'm going to show you guys. I've not even started this round yet. I'm just trying to get that first groove going.
You're getting compliments on your garage, by the way.
What's that?
You're getting compliments on your garage.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Nice and organized. Yeah.
I just cleaned it up this week. I've been doing a lot of trim work, and it was a wreck in here.
Oh, yeah. That's oof, wow. Snowstorm in our dining room.
All right, so like I said, I've not even started the circle part. You can see I've got just a nice groove at the top. And so now I'm just gonna work my way right around that edge just a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. If you are doing this with us and you go too deep and you penetrate the inner diameter, that's okay. It's no big deal. Nothing to freak out about. Like I said, I've drilled all the way through and used it and been perfectly fine with it. Yeah. Okay. Like I said, tonight's just a simple, get the basic idea, something to go shoot in the backyard till you get the bug, which happens, and then you'll be ready to make tons of these things.
Yeah. Well, and I should mention, at least in Houston, a number of the city parks, they actually have some archery ranges, some free archery ranges. I don't know about other areas or cities, but Houston is good for that. In a weird color there, so I gotta balance this. I actually decided the Swiss Army knife file is lousy for this, so I'm just gonna watch you and
okay.
I'm fine with the Dremel tool later after the show's over.
Yeah, the Dremel is horrified.
So, while you're filing, I'm going to do a quick commercial break to our sponsors here. So let me just do a shout out to Campcraft Outdoors, because if you are outdoors, that will get you going. We already talked about the Wazoo Survival, but Campcraft Outdoors, check them out. They have all sorts of like bushcraft. Bushcraft is like hiking kind of in a primitive style. So what this means is instead of plastic and cheap synthetic type stuff, you're out there with canvas and leather and wool. And they make the best canvas and leather and wool and steel type stuff. So packs and haversacks and some clothing and some absolutely fantastic knives. So check them out. if you are the type that goes off the trail, this is the sort of thing you want. Campcraft Outdoors. And then also shout out to my buddy Ricardo Shilly-Shally at with the Campcraft Outdoor, if you use the coupon code TAKE10, you get a 10% discount from them. Meanwhile, at Herbs, the herbal shop up in I forgot where it was. Up in East Texas. It's been a while. Yeah, so talk to him. What's great about Herbs and Ricardo is he treats it almost like a doctor, where if you have a particular issue, he will sit down with you or do a Zoom call with you or something and figure out just everything that's going on. He has a big list of questions he's going to ask. And then from that, he will develop what he believes is the best herbal remedy for you. So this guy has talked at herbal conferences, all of them, knows his stuff. So definitely someone you can reach out to for herbal guide, very specific for you. And with the Forking Weeds coupon, you get a 15% now in midnight. So he kind of has you beat there on Common Bee. All right. And again, for those of you just joining in, we are making some PVC archery bows. So
I've got a tool tip as well. Using your rasping file here, your round file, some people call them rat tails. When you first start this groove, just like a saw, I feel it's better. It's easier to stay more consistent if you pull back instead of trying to push forward.
Right.
I'm a big fan of the Japanese pull saws in woodworking than the kind of forward pushing saws. Makes a world of difference. More accuracy for sure.
And even though files are designed to cut on the push, because you're cutting through plastic, there's enough. Yeah, it'll still cut through the plastic even on the
get through super easy. Yeah. Super easy.
Ooh. Kelly wants to just say that she has apron envy. And
I love this thing.
I was talking with the Professor Brandon that, when I saw his apron, it's like, that's that apron. That's an awesome apron. You gotta have an apron if you're working.
Yeah, I do a lot of woodworking, and so I'm always having to deal with all the sawdust and crap. So finally I was like, I gotta get an apron. It's gonna change my life, I know. And to carry all my crap, because I'm always like, where's my tape measure at? I'm done with all that.
I was thinking today that they should make on the tape measures something that makes a beeping sound. So like when you pull the tape measure and shut it for the next hour, it goes beep, beep, beep. Someone there now has $1 million idea.
It is. I would buy 5 of those things.
Definitely. Or, imagine this, one where you clap and it starts beeping. So when you set it down outside or something.
Yeah.
Oh, well. It's gotten to the point where I have a tape measure in each room of the house. It's just easier than hunting down the tape measure reading classes. Over, I will walk you through the tape measures and reading classes in every room of the house.
Yeah.
And they'll disappear.
I've got like 2 tape measures in here. I've got another one in my shed. So yeah, I'm the same way. It's just better to have them where you're going to be at.
Yep. Like a lot of conferences and stuff, there'd be these little, they'd only be like a 10-foot long tape measure, but 90% of the time, that's all you need. So away you go.
Almost done with the filing. Last little bit. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, the other side too.
This is a part for me to do that backside filing. I just have a little brush. You use the toothbrushes to clean your file out. Old toothbrushes are perfect.
Oh man, never throw out a toothbrush.
No.
Make sure it's well marked that it's no longer a toothbrush.
Yes.
But I got there we go. Yeah, I got a bucket of them upstairs under the sink. Whenever you need to clean something out, just grab a toothbrush. You get all sorts of useful information here on that. Very
Okay, I think we're almost there. Now I've got some other ones to show that I didn't get rid of all my old bows, because what happened was I started out. I used to shoot archery a lot as a kid. Got out of it, got back into it, got out of it, got back into it. And along the way, I started making PVC bows, and then I got that itch again, and then I got a good job, and then I started buying bows. So it's a slippery slope, everyone. Be careful. It's a drug. We're making drugs tonight. You just didn't know it.
I guess full disclosure, Brandon and I both bought all sorts of stock in the local PVC company.
That's right.
You're all
I'm
going
glad you decided to wait till now to do this, because this is high dot. This was worth $1 million a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. You can find this pipe.
Yep. Okay.
Swirl this with a. So, like I said, it's the 3/4 inch PVC, schedule 40, just your regular. It was like $2.50 for this 5-foot piece of PVC.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap. That's why if you mess up on one, it's no big deal. You're not out a bazillion dollars on these things. But I'll talk about how elaborate you can get with these. But again, like I said, doing the basics tonight is important because it helps you understand the dynamics behind making a bow and why it works the way it does and all these things, especially if no one's ever shot one. Or if you got a kids party coming up, man, you can make tons of these super easy and just let them run around. Well, that might be dangerous, but you can let them run around and shoot stuff, right?
Yeah, you get the Nerf tipped arrows, because a lot of the arrows, they have the replaceable tips, and you can just screw whatever you want into the arrow.
Yeah, you can buy the archery tag arrows.
Oh yeah,
I've played archery tag. It's a lot of fun.
I think. Oh man, I'm just picturing you and me running around the neighborhood shooting at each other, bows and arrows, and how long we could do that before the cops showed up.
Oh yeah, it'd be a ton of fun.
A bow and say, let's do it.
Right. Okay, so now I've got the grooves on both ends, just like this.
All the way through. Interesting. Okay.
So I got close. So the thing with PVC is once you get close, you can kind of see that it gets a little bit lighter. You can actually feel it sometimes on the backside.
Right.
Again, if you're worried or concerned about your string slipping, because if you tie your loops too loose, they might. Just keep going. It's okay to go into that. I'm showing you there's more than one way to skin a dog. I mean, cat or donkey. I don't know. What are we skinning? Anyway.
Dragons.
Dragons.
Yes. We shall take our bows and fight the dragons.
Right. Now, on this one, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to make one more mark at one end, 8 inches, 7 to 8 inches. I'm going to go 8. The reason I'm doing this is for this bow with the string that we're going to be using, that's just going to be my measurement, so I know where my loop needs to be. So when I put it on here, I get the right bend in it. Okay?
Gotcha. Oh, clever.
Yeah, I'll talk about all the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. Kind of once we get it, we can see it. It's a little bit easier to explain it once it's all put together. All right, so you got your length of, now I'm using paracord. Mark, you're using?
What's called tarred.
Like a trot line. Right?
Yeah. So it's usually what they use to make like the trot lines. Yeah, so tarred bank line.
Yeah.
So and it's just a little thinner, but it really is really strong and doesn't stretch. And it's a lot cheaper than paracord, and I'm cheap.
Yeah, well, the thing about yours that I mentioned before is you're going to get less stretch on that. The only thing you would have to do with that string is you're going to have to add something to it to make it a little bit fatter where the arrow needs to attach.
Oh, good point.
That's just more of a safety reason, so that the arrow doesn't come off the string as you're trying to draw, because then you let go and it can just go everywhere.
That was one of my concerns with the paracord. I was thinking the paracord would be on the thick side, but I guess you actually do want it to grip some.
Yeah, you do want to grip. If it's too thick, then yeah, it's going to slow down the arrow some. But the nocks are designed to have a little bit of give to it. You can also heat up your nocks with a blow dryer and cause them to be a bit tighter or open them up a little bit more.
That's a good idea.
It kind of depends on what string you have on there.
I got plenty of paracord, so maybe I will go back and do it with paracord. Does that make sense? Do you leave the core inside the paracord? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just leave it as it is. Now, the reason I'm building this one the way it is, just real simple for everybody, is going into this, I'm imagining like I just need to build a bow quickly. Maybe it's a zombie apocalypse, you're in The Walking Dead all of a sudden, and you need some type of weapon, and you're like, hey, I've got some arrows, I want to go hunting or whatever. You could cut this, maybe you've got some in your garage somewhere. If you don't have running water anymore, maybe you can cut a piece out of your wall or whatever. You have something available. Now, I have made bows, mainly as a kid, out of like yopons and stuff like that. You can do that as well, right? It's just that this is something that no one's going to be looking for in the apocalypse. You're going to think to be looking for this, and it's super easy to find. You don't have to worry, like a limb may not be straight. This is straight, right? Mm-hmm. So the way that I do my string is you simply are going to do your loop and do a knot, right? Tie your loop in a knot. Just make sure that it's big enough to fit around the end of your 3/4 inch PVC pipe.
You put a pretty big loop in there. That makes sense.
Now I try to get my loops about the same diameter as the pipe, so you can put it on there if you want, and then you just kind of cinch it up to that, kind of work it to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That way there's not a lot of movement in it. Okay, so then I've got this one. Now, I mentioned earlier this mark that I made. So I've got the bottom end tied on. Mm-hmm. So now what I want to do is I want to do another loop that ends up about right there. Okay. So like I said, right around 7 to 8 inches. I did mine 8.
Was that 8 inches from the knock curve or from the end? Okay, from the end of the bow.
Yeah.
Okay, Kyle, and that's the 550 paracord. Kyle Wright is asking what size paracord. I'm assuming it's the 550 paracord. Yeah. So the 550 is the slightly thicker stuff with the 7 strands inside. So 7-strand paracord as opposed to, was it 5-strand or 4-strand, the thinner stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's not too, from my understanding, and maybe you can correct me, a lot of those paracords, depending on even with the strands, there's not too much of a diameter difference, I didn't think. Yeah. I don't think it'd be enough to cause any issues here. Again, you could open the knock up if you did have some thicker ones.
That makes sense.
Okay, so now I've got mine about that length. I'm going to move my table out of the way here.
The trick of putting the string on.
Now there's a couple of ways that you can do bows. I'm going to move my camera down as well, so that you're looking at my feet. Now, if you have a real bow and you purchase one, I do not advise doing this at all. Buy a bowstringer and use that.
Really?
Because you can really screw up your bow if you don't do it correctly. I see people at bow shops doing this all the time. And that's fine if that's what they want to do. Go for it. I'm not a risk taker like that. I'm going to use my bowstringer to do it because I just dumped, $200 into a bow or something. I'm going to do it right.
Okay. Yeah, I always the method you're about to show. Yeah.
So there's 2 ways. I've seen people where they put their foot here and their knee here and they bend it down like this. I'm a big fan of putting this
through, my
ankle, putting my leg about midway through, and you're going to bend it. Now you're not going to arm wrestle it like this, you're going to kind of lock your arm and you're going to bring the whole thing down. And you're going to feel tension on this foot. It's going to rotate around your leg, and then you're going to put your string on. So it's kind of this one motion, goes over, and it should fit in your knot, just like that. Cool. Now, this one there's a problem here. It's not enough distance here. Let me show you. So I've actually got to tie my string a little bit shorter. So this is called brace height. So here's our middle part where we marked it earlier. And we see that it's actually only 4 inches from the back of your bow. Okay. You don't want that. Brace height should be 7 to 8 inches. Now for me, I know about where that is because the string will come to here on my arm. So what that means is I got to retie this. The other thing with paracord is it does give a little bit of a stretch. All right, so you can notice here, I am way above my line here where I tied my knot. So as that knot tightens up, it actually gives me a little bit of extra room, and I don't want that. So now I've got to retie it.
Okay. You said the brace height should be about 7 inches or 8 inches.
Right. Well,
or somewhere in there.
In there. So here's what I've come across with a couple of bows that I've shot and that I have. Some of them recommend 7 inches. I think most of them recommend around 7. Some are 6. Some are 8. But yeah, I'm going with I'm sticking with 7 for now. If there's another archer out there that's just like, what are you talking about? Hey man, it is what it is. I'm saying 7. It's all right. All right, so let me do that again. I retied it. See, I just did something I told you not to do. I said don't arm wrestle it, and that's exactly what I started doing. There we go.
Whoa. Okay.
Now, yeah. Now this one's a little bit much. This is 8.5. I'm not going to worry with it. It'll be fine. So now we have our bow.
Sweet.
Here's a couple of things to just kind of talk about. Let me get us back to normal here with the PVC bow. PVC will bend and it will keep this shape if you keep it strung up. So you can't leave it like this. As a matter of fact, once we take this down, it's going to try to keep some of that shape for a while. It will return. I'll talk about ways that you can do, some things you can do to avoid that, okay? This is it. You're pretty much ready to go if you've got arrows. The way that we're going to shoot this, I've got a little target set up just kind of illustrate how it shoots and all that stuff in the garage here. Is a very bare bow, traditional bow style of shooting. There's no arrow rest or anything like that. Your hand becomes the rest. I don't advise shooting barehanded. So you either want to wear a glove, or if you have some extra string, I'm not here and do that. You can wrap this around, lash it right where we measured the middle. That's going to be where your arrow sits.
Okay.
So you could do a quick little lash around it if you so choose to. I don't want to sit here and blow all of our time. We still got to show these things off. But you can lash this up and let that arrow sit there. And let me explain why.
Once when I was shooting barehanded, I ended up putting one of the feathers through the webbing of my hand.
Yes. So on your arrows right here where the feather is glued and attached, as that comes across your hand, it can embed in your hand.
Yep. I've had that happen.
Yes, I've done it as well. It's very uncomfortable and it hurts really bad.
And it's embarrassing.
It is very embarrassing.
That's the most pain, really. Embarrassment.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a glove, just a leather glove, cheap glove, anything you got. You'll probably, if you look at like reenactors, they'll have like specific leather gloves just for shooting like this.
Yep.
Because using goose feathers is what they used to use to do this, but they would kind of glue them, they would wrap them on. And so, yeah, you could easily get stuff poking through your hand. Okay.
I do want to point out with these bows, you really do need to buy arrows. Making arrows, there's actually a lot of technology in arrows, but arrows are relatively cheap at Academy. Depending on the size, you can get a 4-pack for under $20. So it's something to keep in mind, in your apocalypse gear.
I've got 2 different arrows here that I'm going to illustrate. I've got this one here that's kind of a normal size arrow that you're going to find at Walmart or Academy. They come with a pre-cut length and everything, usually with the field tip. Is usually what you can get pretty easy for these. This one here, however, is a little bit smaller diameter. I know it's kind of hard to see.
You can see it, yeah.
These you use in really low-powered bows because you want that flexibility of your arrow. Whereas these can be flexible. Some of them are very strong though. So that deals with spine. That's a whole nother topic. At this point in the game, you don't really have to worry about that. They're gonna both shoot just fine for you. The other thing before we shoot real quick, I'm gonna shoot the bigger arrow first, is if you take your bow and you just kind of look down it this way, you're not going to be shooting dead center like a bow that has a cutout in it or a compound bow.
Right.
What that means is you're not actually going to aim where you want to shoot with the bow. You're actually going to need to aim where you want to go with the arrow. That deals with Archer's paradox. Archer's paradox is not about the arrow going around the bow. That's not how that works. It's about the perception of where you think the arrow is going to go versus where it actually goes, based on how far from center you actually are. So, for example, I'm just going to knock this one.
And let's just mention, if you look at arrows, they will have 2 feathers the same color and 1 the odd color.
Yep. And so that one, the odd color goes out. Exactly. So, for example, if I put my string in line with the PVC and the camera, look where my arrow's at.
It's way off, yeah.
And that's because the bow is in the way. But watch what happens whenever I pull it back. It looks like it comes in line, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A little bit more in line. And so that's kind of the tricky part to bows that are very fat. But if you have that kind of cutout or a compound bow, you're shooting pretty much center shot. You have to worry about all that.
That's why you got to practice with these some to be accurate.
All right, so I measured this out today. I'm right about 18 feet, I guess, from here. And I'll do a quick. Hopefully I don't. Hopefully I hit this thing on the first try.
Yeah, we'll edit it out if you miss.
Right. So one thing to note too is you don't have a knot placed on here, so you want to try to get your arrow as 90 degrees to the string as possible. Once you get that dialed in, I always recommend just put a mark there with your marker, and that'll be your consistent spot, because the whole thing about archery is consistency, time and time again, doing the same shot over and over and over.
Hey, it looks bullseye-ish. Oh, leave it in there. Oh, I was going to say, show how deep. Oh, you're okay. So it went in
that far.
Yeah, so what is it, about 6 inches?
Yeah, pretty close to 6 inches. Now, again, it's a softer target. We're only 18 feet away, but I mean, if you're hunting a rabbit or a small bird or birds or whatever, you can totally get
drones.
Yeah. So It's pretty quick for it to be a PVC bow. I really enjoy shooting them. They're a lot of fun. I do want to show you just real quick some of the other things that you can do with these bows. Now, I do want to mention real quick before I do that, if you're going to make these and keep them, store them with the string off. Don't let them get too hot or too cold. My one caution, what's that?
Keep them out of sunlight until you're.
My one caution is if you're buying PVC, it's hard to know if they've been sitting out in the sun. So always be careful in understanding that could this shatter? Yes, it could. I've never seen one. I've never had one break. The ones I've made, I've shot, put 100 arrows through them easy, and they're fine. Now, I made one for my daughter, but I made a recurve.
Oh, nice.
And I'll grab the string for that one. So what you can do, as we were talking earlier with the heat, is you heat them and you can flatten them. You can cause it to be flat and then create all these recurves. There's a lot of different kind of tutorials online as well for tons of different bows. Now, the one that we just made, if you really want to soup that thing up and keep it from kind of holding that shape, there's another trick that you can do. It's going to cost a little bit more, but you're going to end up with a really strong bow, and one that you don't have to worry about losing the shape. So this is the recurve that I made for my daughter.
Wow. For
her draw length, I mean, it's maybe 15 pounds. I mean, it's pretty lightweight. For my draw weight, it gets about 20. It becomes a horse bow. So it can pull a lot of weight. But yeah, so I flatten this out so it's a little bit closer to center. I mean, you can do tons of really fun stuff with these things.
How did you heat it? Did you use a heat gun or stick it in the oven? Or
so you can use a heat gun, but I just saw a really cool way to heat these up. I don't know how you would do it because you could heat it up the whole piece of pipe, and that is you heat up sand on the stove and you pour it into it. And it heats it from inside out, and it just becomes like a wet noodle. So then you would take it out and put it in a form and hold it. But for this one, what I did was
big to get everything perfect. Yeah.
So for this one, I heated it up with the heat gun. I flattened it first. So I got basically two pieces of boards and just clamped the crap out of it to get it flat. Once it was flat, then I came back and did the curve around like a pot.
Okay. Oh, clever. Yeah.
The trick is to get it warm enough to move, but not warm enough that it loses its flatness, its shape. And then I just kind of clamped it around the edge. You can tear the edges if you get it too hot, it'll rip. And then you have to start all the way over. The bow that we just made, this one here, 3/4 inch. If you want to make this bad boy super strong, go grab some of these fiberglass driveway markers. There's tons of tutorials online for these. You basically cut one in half and you basically tape them all together. You get basically one up top that's bent, one down bottom, and then some right here in the kind of riser area where your handle would be. And holy cow, those things with the fiberglass are very quick, very fast shooting bows, and you can get up to 70 pounds. Really.
So they're inside the PVC.
They're inside, yeah. So you'll do all of this the exact same way, just you're going to shove these down in there to get more of that flexibility of that fiberglass. You're going to wedge them in there. It's pretty impressive. You don't want to start at 70 pounds. That's too much. You're going to tear something in your back. I always recommend people start out with 25 pounds and then just work your way up from there. 25 pounds it's a lot of force for a little tipped arrow to make its way through. And I did want to mention to you, Mark, what you were saying with your draw length. Like, so most people when they draw, we're shooting at around 28 inches. I'm a little bit short, so mine's like 26. What that means for those of you that we mentioned it earlier is how far you're going to actually pull back on your bow. But you can see that there's a lot of extra length at the end of the arrow. Perfectly fine. That's what you want. You'll see a lot of people that have their arrows really short. You don't necessarily have to do that. Long is just fine. The problem is if you shoot an arrow that's too short. This is the one injury that I see the most. Not in real life, but like on people posting like, oh my God, I shot myself with my bow. I'm like, how the hell did you shoot yourself with your bow? It's because your arrow's too short. Because here's what happens. It falls off. No excuse. When you draw back, guys, oh, this is terrible when you see the photos. Don't look it up on the internet. Look it up on the internet. When you draw back, if your arrow's too short, it's easy to overdraw, or when you start to release, that falls off. And when you let go, guess where that arrow's going now?
Right through your
hand. Oh, man, it's terrible. And I've seen people shoot, and I'm like, sir, your arrow is too short. You're making me real nervous over here. But it's one of those things where everybody's learning in archery. So when you go out to some of these archery ranges and somebody approaches you to kind of give you tips, don't be mad at them. They're there to help, because it can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. But shooting around the backyard with the PVC bow is so much fun. It's a great way to introduce kids to archery. I made my son one, and what I did was I cut my bow and I put a little like not a T that's a PVC, but the cross where it's up, down, and through. Yeah. So he could just put his arrows in there and shoot right through the middle of it.
Oh, clever! Actually.
Yeah, he liked it a lot, and so now he's got like 3 bows around here somewhere.
Well, and it's great for eye-hand coordination and brain development. There's a lot of good research that shows the more time kids spend throwing things at stuff,
yes,
the better their brain develops, because there's all these calculations that they're ending up doing. So
yeah,
really great mental development. And shooting at pumpkins on Halloween, different fruit is fun. You start with a pumpkin, you end up with a grape, shooting who can hit the grape.
Yeah, man. We shoot out in the backyard. I bought some really fun little targets that look like animals, and we shoot those. We haven't shot in a while, unfortunately. Just it's been so busy.
Yeah.
But now that the weather's a little bit better, I'm breaking out my bows. I've got to refinish one, and because I bought one secondhand and it needs some work. But yeah, I'm excited to get back out and start shooting more myself.
Oh, me too. So
right.
Okay. We are at 9 o'clock. So do you have any last minute things you thought, oh damn, I should have said this sort of thing?
Have fun. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great information online. I will recommend one other YouTube channel if you're really looking to learn the basics of archery. I've been meaning to create my own series based around children since my son shoots. But it's called New Sensei, NU Sensei. He's an instructor, Olympic archer down in Australia. But man, he just gives really good advice. He's not a gatekeeper or anything like that in terms of archery. So it's a great website if you're interested in shooting, or just getting your kids to shoot and learning the basics of like how to draw, how to do all of those things. There's some really good information out there.
Cool. Then now we have more for people. So again, I put up Professor Lowery's YouTube channel, Bearded Hobbit, all sorts of good stuff on there, making stuff, also deep in preparedness and that sort of thing. So yeah. Oh, hey, Melanie's here. Hey, Melanie. Yep. Okay. She does archery too. There are a number of archers, hanging out here. Cool. Oh yeah. And someone says, yeah, don't agree to play William Tell. Definitely.
See, this is the bow that you make that you let your friends shoot instead of letting them shoot your bow.
Kind of like you have the pocket knife you lend and the pocket knife that you don't.
Exactly, because what always happens, never fails. You show your friend your bow, and they're like, "Oh, this is awesome," and they'll crank it back and they'll dry fire, and you're like, "Ah, that's it, game over. You just killed my bow."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. Don't dry fire bows. They're not designed for that. They need that resistance. Otherwise, there's the whole hysteresis thing that goes out of whack.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's so much fun. So much fun. So yeah, this is your entry level drug, archery.
Yep. And PVC too. Once you start building out of PVC, you've learned all the cool stuff you can do.
There's so much stuff out of PVC. It's unreal.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. This was a great tutorial. I can't wait now to get my rat tail because, yeah, the Swiss Army knife file that didn't work. So I'm going to read.
Maybe you should try. Now you know.
Yeah, I had to try because, again, I was thinking, because I pretty much always have this with me. If the zombie apocalypse happens when I'm out, I can rip some, PVC out of the pipe, out of the wall, and that. But now I know to carry a rat tail file with me too.
You can drill a hole and just go through.
Yeah, I can do that. And now that, because we're going a little over, but that's okay. I was wondering how you decided how long to make the string, but then you said, you measured it here, and so now we know. Cool.
Yeah. For again, that's based on 5 feet. If you go above or below that, it's going to be different. So just trial and error it. That's the brace height is really what you want to look for. So you can go up or down with that.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. Episode 98 is in the books. 2 more to go. Next week, I'll be talking about hygiene and kind of off-grid camping, hiking, everything from how to keep your body clean to how to wash your clothing. So could be interesting. I promise to wear clothing during the show, though. So, okay, everyone, have a great evening. It is time for us to shut this down. I will see you at the Donut Cup tomorrow. Brandon, as always, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
And end broadcast.